and another one. Let's do the last bow and arrow video. I think we will be finished depending on how much I get stuck on stuff. Not gonna waste too much explaining. Welcome back to the channel. Yada yada yada. Please like and subscribe. The usual stuff. You know what? So I'm recording all of the bow and arrow tutorials like back to back. So I'm gonna try to upload them quickly. I have some free time, so I'm gonna try to like bump up the video release intensity here for a while. We'll see if I manage to or not, but yeah. So anyway, let's jump straight into it. We're gonna pick up right where we left off. Bam, bam, bam. We have all this stuff here. Remove this print string that you had here from the other video if you actually copied that, because it's gonna be annoying if that's everywhere. But we have finally set up our aim space, lens aim, blend space, aim rotation space, whatever you want to call it. It's working like a charm. We can strafe while we do it, so everything's good. What we need to do now is we're gonna actually fire an arrow and hit our enemy. So I'm not gonna do this too complicated. We're probably not gonna do like bullet drop and stuff like that. You can do that as well, obviously. It's actually super easy to do that. So anyway, go into a suitable folder. I have this weapon folder, so I'm just going to create a new folder called projectile. Actually, we're not going to do that now. We'll do that later. First, we're going to actually set up the fire function. And this will absolutely require me some pausing because I do not remember the references at all. But when we press, we do have a left mouse button, right? When we press the left mouse button, we do the event attack. But if we are aiming, we're gonna do another event. And the event we're gonna do if we're aiming is gonna be called. We need to do that first. We actually have a range graph, awesome. So custom event fire projectile. No, actually no. Event shoot. We'll start with that and see if we need to rename it later. So we have this left mouse button. This should not be there, it should be inside the event attack. To keep it cleaner. And when we have that inside the event attack, it's going to be cleaner, so we can copy this, delete it, put it into our input graph, which is basically our controller. Just so we know where all our inputs are. It's going to be easier to keep track of stuff later. If we are aiming, we are gonna event shoot instead of event attack. So what are we gonna do? The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna line trace by channel. And it's gonna start by the follow camera, get world location. So it's gonna start by the camera location, and then it's gonna end if we get the get rotation, and from the rotation we get the forward. No. Yep, we get the forward vector. So it starts by the camera, and then we want to shoot it straight towards the center of the screen, which is where the camera is currently looking, because the camera is basically the screen. So it's forward from the camera, basically straight in the screen. And then we're gonna decide how long forward it's gonna go. So we're gonna do vector times float. And this is basically the range of the line trace. So we can do 10,000. Let's start by that and see if that is fine. For duration, let's do 5 seconds is fine for now. Let's see if that works. You can see this might be several problems. So it's not really okay. Yeah. So since we offset the camera, the line trace is also offset. So for instance, if we go, I think it's this. No, it's this. If we set this to 0, so it might be easier to just not. It might also be a problem with where the reticle is actually is. Should be. So it's not exact. So I do want to use the offset though. So this can be two things. It can be that my honest guess is that the reticle is just not in the center. And that's the true center where the line trace actually hits. It's really hard to tell. It's very hard to tell, but that should be it. So let me just go into the HUD and let's count. No, because I do feel like it's not. I also do not feel like this is the center. 1 second, let me pause. All right, I think I know what it is. I suck at this stuff. It's like it's hard to remember all the small details. I think we need to add this because we still need to get the original vector plus vector. I think that's the way it should be. That feels better. Makes more sense. Let's try again. Yep, there we go. Ba-dam! So now we have a line trace firing in the middle of the screen, or at the reticle. So that's good. That's where we want to shoot. Awesome. So that's the first part. Now we want to use this line trace to determine where to fire, basically. How do we do that? Okay, so that's the first part. Do we just do that right now? I think we need to promote this to a variable called I think we need to promote this. Okay. Because basically we want to figure out, we're gonna need a spawn transform for our arrow, basically. But let's just, we don't have a service spawn item. Okay, so we go into our functions graph. Where is it? Go into our functions, where we have a lot of super ugly code. Custom event server spawn item spawn actor. This one is a special one because when we spawn actors, we actually we only need to run it on the server because this one is a little bit tricky. I usually have a lot of problems with this one because it's easy. If you multicast it, it's gonna create 2 actors and yada yada, and if you don't check for authority, it's always some detail that fucks it up. So let's just spawn actor from class, and basically we need to figure out the transform that we want to spawn in. But we're gonna use always spawn and try to adjust. Actually, don't always spawn but ignore collision. No, try to adjust location but always spawn. And here is where our projectile comes. So right click, user interface. No, not user interface. Blueprint class actually. It's gonna be actor. It's gonna call master projectile. And let's do a static mesh. Call it projectile mesh. And do we have an arrow? And those are not the right kind of arrows. Sparrow, that's close. Narrow cap, that's also not correct. There should be an arrow in the infinity blades. Dual blade arrow, this is an arrow, right? We're gonna use this as an arrow, I think. Yeah, you get the picture. There are plenty of arrows to get from Sketchfab, and I've shown you how to do that before. And also there are a million asset packs on the marketplace. This is gonna be fine for now. I'm gonna convert to static mesh, models, game, sm_arrow. That's what I'm gonna call it. There we go. And I'm gonna add it to the master projectile. And we are gonna. Why is rotation so weird? It's not. Choof. There we go. That's our arrow. A lovely arrow. There we go. And we have an arrow. It's quite big, so maybe make it a little bit smaller. Actually, this you shouldn't change the scale of this one because this should use 1. You should change the scale of the arrow itself. So let's do 0.8. Just to make it a little bit smaller. Actually, let's do 0.6. There we go, closer to an actual arrow size. And we are gonna, in the master projectile, we're also gonna add a. This is gonna be depending on what you want. I mostly use. You could add a static mesh as the trace. And if you have some kind of like cloud something, sometimes it's good because it's like white, like no, sorry, not the cloud. I meant for the actually not static mesh. Yeah, static mesh, and you can do like a capsule or something, or don't I have like a normal freaking. You could do something like this, 0.05, 0.05, and this is going to be. You can see that we are creating like a trace here, and if you have like a cloud material, cloud moving, that sounds good. Okay, it wasn't good. Kind of find something. Usually you can find something that's just like transparent. That's actually better. It's only shown from one, but yeah, you get the point. That looks kind of like a swish, or you could just add a what's it called, particle system. And if you have like a trail, let's see if we have something here. I'm dragging this out. Oops, not there. That's not a particle system. Let's see. Yeah, you have to check around. There are from the marketplace. I know there are stuff in the Infinite Blades packs. Actually, let me just pause for 1 second. Or no, yeah, you get the picture. You just have to try around. I know there are in the Infinite Blades pack or one of the Paragon characters. I might spend some time in between videos to find something suitable that is free, but for now, let's just do it like this. And we need to add projectile movement. So this is what's actually moving the arrow when it's spawned. I'm not sure. We'll just have to try out. Actually, let's do something like 500, just so we can see it moving. And gravity scale I'm gonna set to 0, but the gravity scale is if it's gonna drop down. It looks weird with arrows though, because it's not. You would expect like it to actually arch if you fire. Where's my camera? You would expect if you fire an arrow, it drop. It should go like this, but when you use the projectile gravity scale, it goes like that, which is not nice at all. So I wouldn't use that. I'm gonna put 0 for now. And that's probably fine. So let's just see if we okay. Let's just check out the arrow. You can see that the arrow is going there and that the trail is actually showing, so that's quite nice. So that's fine. So let's use our master projectile. So from the event shoot, we're gonna server spawn actor, and we're actually gonna drag it like this as well. So the actor is gonna be master projectile. And this is the tricky part, the transform. Because we want this transform, right? Actually, yeah, okay. If we split this struct bin, it should be fine, because the rotation is probably fine. I think if we do just do like this, sorry, copy this float plus float. If we just get the word location plus the forward vector, but that's not good, no, because that's gonna be spawned by the camera then. So what we need to figure out is basically we need to create a socket in our bow and figure out a way for it to translate, basically to spawn by the socket, but to go to this location, this line trace location, basically. Because the line trace is coming from the camera, but the projectile that we're spawning is not going to come from the camera, it's going to come from the actual bow. So it's going to need to be rotated slightly different. So let me pause that for a second and find out how I do that. Alright, it's Sheedy time. I'm looking at my own old video to figure out how I did this before. So, so if you're wondering why I'm looking at this screen, is because I printed my own video to actually find out how I did it. So what we're gonna do here is go into your whenever you have a ranged weapon, we need another socket, and the socket that we need here is gonna be called muzzle, because I did this once for a third-person shooter where I had a rifle, so muzzle made sense, and since then I've just been calling it muzzle, even though this doesn't really have a muzzle. But that's basically where we spawn the arrow. So the muzzle is there, perfect. So if we hit something, we're gonna break the hit, and we're gonna get our ranged mesh, which is the weapon that we're using, and we're gonna get socket location, and the socket we're gonna get is this muzzle that we just made. Muzzle, not muscler, muzzle. So, and we are gonna, from the muzzle to, this is the part that's hard to figure out. So we're gonna get the impact point or the location. I'm not really sure. Let's see how I did it in my other video. I got the impact point. So let's do the impact point again then. Impact point. Find, look at rotation, I believe. But the start is the muzzle and the impact point. So we're looking from the muzzle here to the end of the light trace, which is what I was talking about before. How do we get? Yeah, you get it. From the muzzle to the end of the line trace, not from the camera like we do with the line trace. So, and we can make transform, because I remember that I made transform, but I'm not sure what I made it with. So let's check once again. And there it is. So we make the transform with, it magically appeared for you. We make the transform from the socket location, and the rotation is from the socket location to the impact normal. That makes sense. And we can recombine, and that's the transform we actually want to use for spawning. And if it's true, we're gonna spawn. So let's see if that works. It's probably not gonna work because this is not as easy as the melee combat. And we can see that it's not working. I know why it's not working. Because it doesn't create a hit. Actually, we don't need the hit, because we are gonna fire every time we fire, no matter if we hit or not. But that did not work either. Good stuff, good stuff, good stuff. Is this triggering? Fire. Best tutorials in the world. Like pretty much everything I say, I have to double check, or I have to, or I have to. You can see that it's actually firing. So why isn't it firing? Is it a replication issue? Let's do standalone. It might be a replication issue because we're creating it on the server, and I was playing exactly, yeah, because I was playing on the client. And this is another issue. It's not actually going in the right, so it's not being created in the right place. And if we play as listen server, so it's not going in the correct place, but it is spawning, so we are getting closer. It's something. Let me check again. All right. So this was a video I clearly should have prepared for. It's like usually I just jump into it and hope it solves itself. That's why it's always so messy. It took me a while to figure everything out, but I got it. So I'm gonna walk you through it. Looks like shit. Basically, we have an issue, or there is an issue with arrows in general. With actual projectiles. It's easier if you don't use an actual projectile. If you just have a gun, you wouldn't see the bullet, so then you can just do a trace, bam, if the trace hits something, you apply damage. That's super easy to set up. But as soon as you mix in projectile, it all goes a little bit annoying, because when you come too close, it's not gonna be good, and when you, so to actually make this really good, because like if we have, for instance, now, how do you solve this? Actually, next time you play like a game that has this kinds of like Skyrim or whatever, look at how they solve this with muscle, even with regular weapons, because right now you can clearly see that my guy is, I'm firing in the back of this one, but the reticle is there, so this creates a weird situation here, because it doesn't really work, because there's something in the way. And yeah, so it messes up with the math behind. There are plenty of situations solved. Also, like this situation, should I be able to shoot here? Because the reticle says I should, and the line trace says I should, but the arrow is obviously gonna go in the wall. So there are plenty of ways. Some people do like, okay, when we're actually hitting a wall or something, the reticle will turn red and we won't be able to fire, or it will magically solve it, or they just ignore it. But there is no like super good way to actually solve that. But basically what happened here is if you fire, you can see if I fire in the head now, the arrow is pretty much gonna miss, because the head doesn't register as a hit, but the capsule does. You can see you get a green trace for the capsule, so the arrow will be a lot more accurate on the capsule. You can see that we're hitting a lot better on the capsule. And also it looks weird because it goes so slow. Obviously when we speed it up, it will be a lot better. But so this is how I made it. So it looks like shit, but okay, if we hit something, then it's like basically, I'm just gonna copy this, delete, just so you can see clearly. If we hit something, you did this before, find the lookup rotation between the socket and the impact point, and from that rotation you make a transform with the muzzle socket location. I created a variable called projectile transform, which is completely unnecessary. You could just put it straight through, but I just did it when I experimented to keep track of stuff. And then we spawn the projectile. And basically, if we don't hit, we're gonna do pretty much the same thing, but for the find lookup rotation, we're not gonna use the impact point because we're not hitting anything important. So in that case, we're gonna use this return vector instead, for the find, look at rotation. I know this is complicated stuff. Maybe I should do like an image of it or something. But I hope you can follow along. So we're just going to delete that for now so you can see how it looks easier. So get socket location goes to find look at rotation. The other one is the end point of our line trace, of our first line trace, to the find look at rotation. From the rotation we go to make a transform, and we make the transform with the muscle location again. So the muscle location is to both find look at rotation and the transform. Once again set the variable, and once again spawn an actor. So where we spawn the actor is going to be, or the spawn transform is going to be different depending on if the line trace actually hits something valuable or not. I'm not an expert at this. You can probably find better tutorials for this out there, to be honest. So go have a look. This is the important part for replication, basically. Spawn the actor on the server. That's pretty much it. In the master projectile, where is it? 1 second, my friend's coming. So yeah, I really need to quit this episode now because my friend's coming and we're gonna go out and get it shit-faced. But one last thing before I quit. Project settings, go into collision, create a new trace channel called projectile. Default response, block everything, so new projectile block. Then in your master AI, just make sure to set the mesh to, it's the default response, so it should be fine. So projectile block, which is the trace channel we just made, and in your player character, this one, no, not this one, sorry, the line trace, make sure that the line trace runs on the projectile channel. So that's it. It's actually working. My friend's here, so I'm gonna quit, and I'll clean this up in the next episode. And yeah, thanks for this. I'm gonna release them back to back with that. Anyway, thanks. Bye. See you in the next video.